3, 2, 1, and cue Frank.
Hi, I'm Frank. I'm sorry that Sam couldn't join us for this introduction, so I'm going to do the introduction myself. My name is Frank Sapovitz. I'm the President and Chief Experience Officer at Fast Traffic Events and Entertainment, event management consulting and production. And I'm here to talk with you today about growing and protecting your brand. Let's face it, we're all pretty good at what we do. We would not be here if we were just average. We're here at ECEF because we have managed event brands, invented event brands, grown them, turned them around, or protected them from a crash and burn. Sam Lippman would not have us here if we did not represent through our event brands or our personal or professional brands the very pinnacle of what our industry has to offer. We accepted the opportunity to be here because we are also smart enough to know that regardless of how many years we have been overseeing our events and organizations, we don't know everything. I was the NFL's lead executive in charge of Super Bowl for nearly a decade. My first day on the job was in Jacksonville, about a week before Super Bowl 39, and my boss, not yet the current commissioner of the NFL, floated a compliment my way that very first morning. I didn't know it was a compliment at the time. It sounded more like a challenge. My expectation of you, he said, was you are going to take Super Bowl to the next level. What level is that exactly? Super Bowl as a sports event was already on its own high level, I thought, so I did not sleep very well for a very long while. Eventually, I started to realize that this brand, like yours, can only be at the height of its success if you accept that it cannot grow anymore. Through most of its history, the Super Bowl was considered, well, as big an event as it could get. The Super Bowl gained in prominence. It grew by the virtue of these three key drivers of its growth: strategy, responsiveness, and luck. We're going to poll the audience, and this will only work if you are totally honest. Thinking about your own organization's culture and your brand, how have you most often grown your event? Press 1 for strategically, 2 for responsively, 3 for luckily, and 4 for equal measures of all three. Let's have a look. Yeah, equal measures of all. Okay, we all knew the answer, didn't we? Ideally, our better senses, our expertise, and our egos support the notion that strategic growth is the purest and most sure way to achieve the growth we seek. And yet, it's only 12%. Many events, expositions, and conferences have certainly achieved greater success by understanding their markets, delivering on their wants and needs, evaluating success, projecting trends, and making continuous adjustments to their long-term plans that will support an upward trajectory. Let's go back to the slide. You will be amazed that many of the great brands in the event world grew in leaps, fits, and starts, and often by responding to or reacting to direct challenges, sometimes even through the fortuitous alignment of the stars. The first part of our presentation today will focus on a case study of how a brand responded quickly and definitively to threats and recognized how to respond, and build on their luck as platforms for future growth. Later, we're going to focus on protecting the growth of your brand through real-time decision-making when your event is at the most threatened during periods of crisis. So let's start now with one of the most well-known event brands in the United States, an event that was born in 1967, and it was called the first AFL-NFL World Championship game. Now, if you have no recollection of the first AFL-NFL World Championship game, that's because there was never a second one. By then, it had changed its name to Super Bowl II. That's right. There was no Super Bowl I, though many people refer to the game by that name that we all know now. And it was not born from strategy. It did not want to be born at all. The NFL already had a championship game, and it had one since 1920, when the league was born in a Hupmobile dealership in Canton, Ohio. But back in 1960, a new upstart league, the American Football League, was formed by a gentleman who wanted to buy a franchise in the NFL and put it in Dallas. Am I not being heard? Not being heard well enough? Okay. The NFL had no interest in expanding at the time or adding new owners to the gentleman's club. But a man named Lamar Hunt used his wealth, business acumen, and influence to form the AFL with a bunch of other wannabe owners so that he could put a team in Dallas the way he planned. And it was called the Dallas Texans. So the NFL, notwithstanding its desire not to grow, also did not want to lose the lucrative Dallas market to a competitor league. So they preemptively created the Dallas Cowboys. No Jerry Jones yet. They did this simply to force Lamar Hunt to move his team and his league to a small, unoccupied, and to them, an unimportant market. And he did just that. He moved the team and renamed them the Kansas City Chiefs. For years, the commissioner of the AFL challenged the commissioner of the NFL to a postseason game between their two champions to settle the debate as to whether the AFL was really a worthy football competitor. The NFL, of course, had absolutely no upside to agreeing and lending credence to the AFL's contention that they could play the NFL and win. But the AFL was starting to attract a following and a network contract, going head-to-head with the NFL on Sunday afternoons. Their refusal to meet the growing fan demand for more football in more places instead created a growing competitor to their business. So the two leagues merged. They would become the American Football Conference, or the AFC, and the National Football Conference, or the NFC. But it wouldn't be until after the first AFL-NFL World Championship game, now called Super Bowl I. Once that rebranding happened, Super Bowl was an aspirational name at best. Look at this photo. Tell me what you see in this photo that you don't usually see at any Super Bowl. Empty seats. Tickets were $12.50 each. About $84 in today's money. And they couldn't fill the place. Roughly 1/3 of the seats were empty on game day. And the television ratings weren't that super either, even with 2 networks airing the game. And remember, in 1967, there were only 3 networks. So you could only watch one other thing or go outside in January. Advertising was $30,000 for a 30-second spot. Today, that same commercial runs $5 million. Once the event was born, I'm happy to say that strategic planning did become part of its catapult to growth. That's really a key notion, because after responding or reacting to a threat, the work was far from done. How do you position the response to a challenge not only to solve the problem, but to leverage the solution to create an even better opportunity? Let's look at how that was achieved before the very first game was played. And it's a decision that still reverberates today. Conventional wisdom is that championships are played in the stadiums of one of the teams competing in the game. Think of the World Series, the Stanley Cup, the NBA Finals. That's certainly the case. To that time, the AFL and the NFL played their championships, and still do, in the teams of their top teams, the stadiums of their top teams. The remnants of that are called the AFC and NFC championship games, and they're held 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. It's what those fans of those teams demand: accessibility to the game. But here's a new one that was fanciful at the time and not yet as meaningful, that would eventually supplant the league championships. The question the owners of the AFL and the NFL grappled with is this: do you birth this new interleague championship game with the same conventional formula, or do you try to make this event a destination and play it in a neutral site for the fans of both teams and the football fans in a third city? What does a neutral site do for you? You as exhibition and conference planners know the answer to this well. You have time to plan. Super Bowl would not be what it is today if the NFL did not know where it was going to be until a week or 2 before the game. Think about all that happens at the Super Bowl and not knowing where it was going to be until 2 weeks before. Second, it can attract new audiences. The game is about 2 teams,
but the Super Bowl event is really about all 32. Thousands of corporate events, corporate guests, opportunities, and press coverage that transcends the usual sports reporting. In the host city, they talk about preparations for the Super Bowl for at least a year. It's not a local event broadcast nationally. It's a national event that is hosted by a city that has the time to plan and take advantage of tens of thousands of sports tourists and hours of television coverage. But in the beginning, because this event brand was lesser known and of untested demand, it had to be in the right city. One that initially, at least, was as powerful a draw as the event was, as the game. Someplace warm and resorty, and a great escape from the cold of northern winter. They settled on Los Angeles. This strategy was central to the Super Bowl experience for years and still echoes today. It's little wonder that 50 of the Super Bowls played so far, more than half of them have been in either Miami, New Orleans, or Southern California. Breaking a sports tradition was not an easy decision, but it was made much easier when the owners were presented with these two options. Play their interleague championship game in a tourism-attractive, weather-friendly, neutral city like Los Angeles, or play a mid-January game in one of the two champion cities. They looked at where the game might have been played the year before. In 1966, that would have seen their championship played on a beautiful January Sunday afternoon, Buffalo, New York, or Green Bay, Wisconsin. All of what the Super Bowl would become was made possible by that one strategic decision. But the NFL was not then and is not today a stranger to a reaction after a threat to the brand has presented itself. They're facing a lot of those issues today. But let me take you back to 1992, Super Bowl 26, when it was attacked in the most vulnerable, weakest, and most exposed spot, the halftime show. Designed to please everyone and in fact pleasing nobody. The halftime's mission was to fill time with a pageant that packed the field with thousands of marching bands, dancers, and an occasional non-controversial headliner like Carol Channing, the Rockettes, Chubby Checker, and Mickey Mouse. Basically a college halftime on steroids. And this is the only time you're going to hear me say NFL and steroids at the same time. Across America, when the first half of the Super Bowl was over, water pressure across the nation dropped precipitously as tens of millions of viewers rose from their couches and left the room to salute my hometown in Queens, New York, Flushing. Thank you. And then they got another beer and more guacamole. And maybe they drifted back to the game eventually, especially if the competition wasn't that particularly compelling. It was really another upstart organization that caused all the fuss. The Fox television network, recently rejected by the NFL as a partner network, see a pattern here? Decided to grab some of the Super Bowl's now increasing viewership when no one was looking. They had a new hit comedy show. Anybody remember In Living Color? Yeah, okay. Well, they advertised nationally that when the first half of the Super Bowl ended, viewers should all change the channel and go to a special edition of that show on Fox that would be concluded by the time the game resumed. 22 million viewers, a quarter of the entire television audience, did exactly that, watching a comedy halftime show on another network and then turning back to the game. That's a big deal, especially to the advertisers and sponsors of the halftime. The league reacted decisively and with all the resources that they could muster to see that that migration would never happen again. So they hired Michael Jackson as the featured star of the following year's show. And the NFL never looked back. No more Up With People, no more Disney shows. They booked Diana Ross, Aerosmith, Prince, and even Michael's little sister, who proved that sometimes maximizing your exposure is not that great an idea. What's important here is that the NFL was just fine for many years having a soft spot, spending less, mounting a show just like everybody else, just like the Orange Bowl, just like the Rose Bowl. What they didn't foresee is that their success as a brand would also make them a target, and the attack would be directed at the weakest spot. And it was truly the weakest spot, because the one area that could have been weaker had already been taken care of through sheer luck at Super Bowl 18. Hoping for luck is not a strategy, clearly, because it's entirely out of your control. But I'll take luck every time. It can be enjoyed for what it is, accepted, and not actively built on. I present as evidence the 1969 New York Mets. But it could, thank you. Thank you. They didn't build on it, by the way. They didn't build on it, not till 1986. But it can also be leveraged to achieve even greater results in the future. In 1984, a brash, bold, ingenious marketer inventor commissioned a young visionary film director named Ridley Scott to create a television commercial unlike any that had ever been seen before and would never be broadcast again. So with apologies to Chris Berman, let's go to the videotape.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of a contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Other than being a spectacularly produced cinematic landmark, what did you not see in this ad? You didn't see the product and no reference to the solution that it might be trying to solve. The Macintosh was not a spectacular success, which was unlucky for Apple, but it was spectacularly lucky for the National Football League because although it wasn't the league that leveraged that luck, all the sponsors and advertisers did. The Super Bowl by this time had reached a level of prominence, but not yet the American cultural experience that it is today. The halftime sealed that distinction, but really it began to unfold in 1984 with that very commercial. Because more than any other contributing factor to the Super Bowl's meteoric growth as a money-generating machine and a marketing behemoth, it has been the commercials that keep people glued to their seats when the game is not in process. The opposite of what happens with any other sports or entertainment broadcast. More or as many people want to see every commercial than every play of the game. It's the reason that the viewership stays strong even when the game is a blowout. If I asked you what commercials you saw during the finale episode of The Good Wife a couple of weeks ago, you won't remember. But if I say Bud Light, Doritos, GoDaddy.com, you may remember many of their Super Bowl commercials to the tiniest detail. You'll remember that more than any of the details of the game, and that's why they're worth $5 million in airtime. To be clear, the NFL did not leverage those opportunities that the commercial had offered, but their luck was that the American business community did, and it didn't cost them a dime. Engaging the same partners and integrating them into the event itself, inside the stadium, within the host market, and nationally, that would come later. But it started here with a little bit of luck and a snake-bit computer that almost bankrupted a promising company that really didn't go anywhere after that. So if there are three ways you can grow, strategically, responsively, or luckily, how do you leverage any of them to grow your already successful events, exhibitions, and conferences? You may be doing just great and have a proven formula for success. Our customers and clients like what we're doing. They expect us to keep providing the same high-quality experience. I say, great, congratulations. But in what you do and what you present, can you distinguish between tradition and habit? Traditions are the things you do because they are right, and in some cases they are loved, but most often they're expected or demanded. Habits are the things that you do because you've always done them. because you think that's you assume it's what makes you great. You may not have heard any complaints about your habits, but they may just simply be tolerated. Or maybe they're not significant enough to be complained about. For years, the pregame show on the field, which you see on your right, always featured a big-name act, and it was almost as grandly produced as the halftime show. Some of you may remember that. As it became more elaborate, the time that it took to set up the show, perform, and remove it lengthened the time between the players warming up and the kickoff of the game to a staggering 50 minutes. And if anybody here an athlete, did you ever warm up for something and then do something 50 minutes later? Why warm up at all? The fans didn't complain, only the players and the coaches did. So we tried moving the show before the players warmed up, thinking that fans, because this was a tradition, would get to their seats as much as an hour earlier so that they didn't miss the show. And we thought people would line up to see Alicia Keys, but the stadium was more than half empty when the show began. The next year, we moved the vast majority of the pregame show to the ticketed tailgate party outside the stadium where only 10% of the total audience could see it. But there we could do the pregame show at the best time for television and for the football teams. It turned out not to be a tradition, but a habit. Here's how we know this. I expected some complaints from people who had bought tickets but couldn't get into the tailgate party. We got exactly 0. So the star-studded pregame show, which they spent millions of dollars on, was an absolute habit, not a tradition. Today, the fans in the stadium see very little of the pregame show, just the anthem, America the Beautiful, and a few more ceremonial elements. The star-driven entertainment show is just seen on television. What do you do that's just habit? Something you do because you've always done it the same way. You could be wasting money. You could be wasting your customers' time. The second is experiential or value enhancement. I heard a lot about experiential enhancement in the earlier session. It's incumbent upon us to understand what our markets really want and need. What do your customers or clients want that you're not providing, or what are you providing that they do not want? How do we make everybody's engagement at an exhibition or conference more enriching or productive? It may take a little digging, it may take a little experimenting, and it may take a lot of risk-taking. But here's an example. The Super Bowl has a week of fan activities, including a big fan fest typically held inside of a convention center. You're looking at it here. This fan fest is called NFL Experience and is primarily a family-oriented event and clears out after 6 p.m. We wanted to get, like most companies, the 20-somethings out. We call them millennials today. And we also wanted to extend the hours of an event that we had already installed and paid for. So we created NFL Experience After Dark. We closed the kids' games, added theatrical lighting, added live music, and rolled out the beer kegs. And it was an absolute disaster. There were too many cool sports bars to hang out in that didn't charge admission. They do that kind of partying better than we do. We totally missed the boat on what our 20-somethings really wanted. What they really wanted was behind-the-scenes access. The casual fan was cool with all the free things there were to do during Super Bowl, but it was the avid fan, our deepest, most engaged customer, that wanted more and were underserved. This is Super Bowl Media Day. It happens in the stadium on a Tuesday at about 10 o'clock in the morning. In 2012, we had this crazy idea. Remember, Tuesday at 10 in the morning. What if we opened Media Day to fans who wanted to see the players without their helmets and hear from them firsthand? In these days of social media, where everyone reports on everything they see and, frankly, everything they eat, going to Media Day and sitting in the stands was compelling content for our most avid fans. Every fan coming in the door got a gift bag with a radio in it that could be tuned to the interview podium of their choice. We sold 7,000 tickets to an event on a Tuesday at 10 in the morning. The key here was a huge increase in scalability without a huge increase in budget. Why was that? Because the event was going to happen anyway. It's a media opportunity. Making a press event available to the fans was not that much more expensive. The radios and the bags were really the only costs. Next, There is strategic growth by expanding the opportunities that lay beyond your primary objectives. Call it the development of secondary objectives. We call it the paper test. This rubric was developed for sports events, but it's no less true for exhibitions and conferences. Let's say that your event's primary objective is providing access to the latest technologies, products, and services to help your membership better compete and flourish. Does your event also help to promote the industry that you serve, adding value to your membership's marketplace? And I'm gonna pick on the car wash folks because I heard them before, and I know they're here, and I met them last year, and they're wonderful. But if you're an association of car washes, for example, do you develop media stories at the same time as your show about why we should all wash our cars more often? Or how the use of non-phosphate soaps can help green the planet, whether you do it yourself or you go to a car wash? What strategies and tactics can you use to attract new audiences to your exhibition or conference? Starting with the businesses and professionals in the industry you serve, the ones that are not coming. Why are they not? Is there something you can offer them that will entice them and also add value to those who are already attending? Are there allied or related industries that could benefit from your show or incorporate some of their content into yours? Many of you leverage partnerships in the form of sponsorships on the show floor or of activities. Have you cultivated a mutually advantageous partnership with your current host city or the next one? If your event travels, do you invite the prospective hosts for future conferences to see how big and impactful your event is, to drive more competition between cities for your business? Can you leverage the economic impact that your exhibition provides to drive more competitive deals with the cities, hotels, and other supplier partners? Is your event environment tired? Is it all business? Do even the fun things seem stale? Do you leave all the socializing to be done at hotel bars, or are there opportunities to add a little intrigue and interest to get people engaged in the morning, afternoon, or evening? What part of your event has that wow factor? The thing that everybody wants to do. Nope, has to do. The thing that everyone will talk about later. And if you missed it one year, you'll never miss it again, even if it's a different wow thing. And of course, revenue. Who doesn't want more of that? I'm not talking about selling more booths, more membership, more tickets. You know how to do that. I'm talking about the upsell. You've got some of your customers' money. What value can you provide that gets them to spend just a little bit more of what they were going to spend in town anyway, but have them spend it with you instead of someone else? The smartest thing that I think Universal Studios ever did was sell a fast pass. Anybody ever do that? You really ought to try it. You get to ride the same rides, only you get to stand in a way shorter line. So how much did that cost them to do? Nothing. How much more do they make? A lot. Twice as much. I bought them for my family one year, and I got to ride more rides over the same period of time. And the best part, I got to enjoy the look of hate from people who didn't spend the extra money. What problem can you solve for your customers that they will gladly pay more money for? Find that solution and you will grow your event. Guaranteed.
You were kind enough to come last year to ECEF, and you agreed to be the closing keynoter, and you did a wonderful job. Thank you very much. As you poked around our business, and obviously we're very aligned, but as you poked around our business, what was the biggest surprise about how some of the things are very much the same, very much different? Did you have any aha moments as you poked around the exhibition and convention business?
I think it wasn't as much an aha moment, Sam, as it was validation of what I thought in the first place. Okay, I'm a sport event producer and organizer, but I've done other things too. I've done parades, I've done conventions, I've done big gala parties, I've done all that stuff in the various parts of the businesses that I've been in, both at the NFL and at the NHL, and I said both, but now there's a third, Radio City. The fact is, we're not so different, you and I. We really aren't. It's the same basic philosophy. You have fans. You really do. You don't have clients and customers alone. You build them into fans, and you create an association and an affinity for your organization. If you can start thinking of them as fans instead of just customers and clients, I think you take your whole business to the next level. That would be my observation.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.